present some of my life's work to you, I just have one concern. See, I'm a very quiet kind of guy, a retiring kind of person. I would just as soon be one of you in the audience looking at me. Some people think I'm a little nerdy, but I prefer to think of myself as being analytical. But you know, audiences like people who have energy, who are exciting, who are going to motivate them to act. But then on the other hand, they say, just be who you are. It'll be just fine. Well, my concern is if I'm sort of the introverted Ralph, you might end up looking at your watch. And if I'm the extroverted Ralph, you'll say, well, who is that guy? So I'm stuck here in the middle of a paradox. Do you feel my pain? How many of you know what a paradox is? And could give me a really good definition? Suddenly the hands went. Well, paradox is one of those words that you're likely to get in a philosophy 101 class. Obviously, it must have been a snow day, and a lot of you missed that opportunity. So today I'm going to present a little bit about what a paradox is and how it works and why you should really know what it really means so that you get it down here in your core and that you really understand it. And then I'm going to give you some ways of really thinking about it so that you can use it in your life to find the success that you're looking for. So we learn about life from the moment that we're infants. We look up and we smile. Pretty soon somebody smiles back. And we figure out, if I smile a lot, they'll smile back at me, and they might even come and pick me up and hold me. And then we get to kindergarten. And the teacher says, how much is 1 + 1? And we say, 2. Sounds like it was another snow day. Yes, so we say 2, and then we get to go to first grade. And we do really well in high school, so we get to go to a good college. Right. And we go to a really good college and maybe graduate school, and then we get a really good job. Right. We get a really good job. And then we do really work. We do what our boss wants us to do. And then we get some of you weren't sure about that. We get a raise. And after a couple raises, what do we get? Promotion. We're all into that one. Okay, so we're learning something about how life works, sort of like stimulus response. We come up with the right answer, and the right things happen. But we're all human. And being human means that sometimes we come up with a wrong answer. And how do we feel when we come up with the wrong answer? We feel shame. We feel stressed. We feel like there's something wrong with us. And we feel like the things that we really want in life are in jeopardy. So, live life to the fullest, but save enough for retirement. Do what's right for me. Do what's right for us. Take a risk. Play it safe. Focus on the long term. Focus on the short term. Which is right. If I focus on the long term, I miss the opportunity of being in the moment. And if I focus only on the short term, I risk it and mortgage my future. So which one is right? They're both right. Which one's wrong? Both wrong. So there's there's no right answer here. So we have what we call a paradox. And in a paradox, there are two polarities, long-term, short-term, for example. So a paradox always has two polarities. And in the middle of that paradox, because we have the tension of these two things, we have this tension. Now, how do human beings feel about tension? Do we like tension? No, we hate tension. And we will do anything that we can to avoid that tension. So let's look at some of the opportunities we have. We could do a little bit of this, and we could do a little bit of that. We always say that compromise is a good thing, right? So we'll compromise a little bit of this, we'll compromise a little bit of that, and what do we got? Nothing. Again. So, we could tell you what, we could try, we're in Minnesota, we'll try the Minnesota nice thing. So we'll just say, you know what, I'll compromise, you win. Then what do I got? One side won, the other side nothing. If it's a paradox, we have to do both. Let's try another thing. Suppose we say, you know what, I'm going to advocate for my side. I'm going to advocate for my side. I will do a little bit more advocating over here, and we advocate a little bit more over here, and what do we got? We got so much tension that we end up looking like the American political system. Neither of those normal ways work. Let's see how this works in real life. Suppose for a moment that you have an argument with someone, and you don't know whether you should say anything. So the self-talk goes a little bit like this. Well, if I say something, they'll be really angry with me. But if I don't say anything at all, then you know what's going to happen. It's going to eat me up. So what I could do is I could tell my friends, but if I tell my friends, it'll get back to her, and then it'll get back to her, and then we'll be, I don't know what I should do. Maybe what we should do is think about it. No, I can't think about it. And pretty soon, what do we got? Gridlock. Nothing's happening. So when you treat a paradox as if it were a problem, we get no action here. So let's think about this, how we could think about this a little bit differently, as if it was a paradox. We could say something, you know what I have to do? I really have to think about both of these things. I have to be able to speak my onions, otherwise I won't be true to myself and it will eat me up. And at the same time, what would happen if I listened to the other person's opinion? Maybe they would be right. Maybe they would have something to offer me that I didn't know. Maybe they didn't really mean it in this way, and I don't have to give up my friendship, and I can be honest. So the whole notion of paradox opens up a whole new set of possibilities that didn't exist before. Thank you. So now what I want to do is to demonstrate a little bit for you. Well, first of all, let me just be very clear here about what a paradox is. A paradox and how it differentiates. And a problem, we have two kinds of issues. A problem is an issue where it's either or. Either I got the right answer or I didn't get the right answer, at which we have a solution. If it's a paradox, it has to be both and the focus is on balance, on doing both and having that right kind of tension. Because what I'm focused on is I pay attention to the tension to make sure that I've got the right amount of tension. So let's have an example here. Suppose for a moment that we're focused on time. And what do we normally do when we are really busy? What do? We have this bag, and we want to stuff this bag with more and more stuff. So we keep stuffing it. We keep putting more things into that bag. And what happens in that bag? Pretty soon that bag gets really, really taut. And then what happens? We try to put more, and then finally we put that bag over our head and we say, oh my God, I'm lost, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. Hello, I got 20/20 tunnel vision. So the whole notion of trying to put more and become more efficient works for a while, and then it doesn't. So let's take another approach. let's take the perspective of what happens if we were to treat this as a paradox. So we have to ask ourselves 3 questions. And the first question is, has this issue been going on for a long period of time? So if the issue has been going on for a long time, we've tried a whole bunch of stuff and nothing seems to have worked, maybe it's a paradox. The second thing we want to know is, are there at least 2 polarities, 2 things that are pulling against each other? So in the case of our time, we know that there are at least 2 polarities. It's my professional time versus my personal time. And the third issue is, do we care? Is it important for us to take action? Now, it's important to distinguish between a problem and a paradox, because what happens if I treat a problem as if it was a paradox, the problem never goes away. And if I treat a paradox as a problem, then what happens is that things get worse over time. So, again, in the situation of the difference between long-term and short-term, or professional time and personal time, this is a paradox that's been going on for a long time, at least 2 polarities, and I care. So now we take the simple next step. Then we say, well, what's the question that I need to ask? So if I have a problem, I'm going to say, how much more stuff can I do, right? How much more can I put in the bag? But if I'm dealing with a paradox, I change the question. I simply say, how can I do a better job of balancing my long-term and my short-term time? Then, of course, we always have this tension. We always have this tension between the 2 polarities. And in this case, what we're doing is we're saying, where on this tension line am I between my professional time and my personal time? Now, here's the part that's really interesting. If I'm focusing on time and treating it as a problem, I'm always doing one side and ignoring the other. So we have another step here that says, how am I going to improve polarity 1? In this case, I'm going to say, well, to improve my personal time, I can do more volunteer work, I can have a date night, I can spend less time on my computer, I could do all that kind of stuff. At the same time, while I'm focusing on getting that one better, I got to make my time better also on the other polarity. So I begin to think about things like, how can I delegate more? How can I stop doing the stuff that doesn't add as much value? How can I have a conversation with my boss and say, how can I get to have more support? So the next notion here is the whole idea of building a paradox minefield. So here's where we begin to take the point of taking this from a concept to where you can move this in your life to get to the other side. So the paradox minefield simply says, let's look at all the paradoxes in my life. They happen in your personal life, they happen at work, and they also happen right inside of you. You have paradoxes all inside yourself. So this is an example of some internal paradoxes that may be inside of you. And where am I on each of these paradoxes? And where you are on the continuum, you take one of those and you begin to act. So, imagine for a moment that you could have your life liberated from the belief that you have to have the right answer. What would happen if, instead of looking at tension as a source of stress and something that you have to get rid of, what if instead you could look at it as a source of information, as something that would be helpful? The next time you're in a conversation where you feel like you have to advocate for your point of view, what would happen instead if you said, that's interesting. I wonder if I could learn from that, if I could begin to appreciate some of the more complexities of life by understanding your point of view. Because sometimes you may be right and I might be right at the very same time. So the whole notion of paradox opens up a mindset to look at the world with a whole different set of eyes. It enables us to be able to collaborate and work together at a completely different level. And there is so much more. We know how to make the healthcare system better. And yet 100,000 lives every year are lost to an inefficient healthcare system. So we wonder whether healthcare is a right that people should have or whether it's a business. But guess what? It is. We know how to reduce harmful emissions. What's keeping us from being able to do that? Each nation looks at itself and does a careful calculus to determine what is best for itself. And while each nation does that, humanity suffers. There are thousands of people who go to bed each night hungry, while we argue the benefits and the concerns regarding GMO and antibiotics in agriculture. And yes, we have a two-party system in which each party is working hard to prove to us that they are right. And the result of that is a fractionalized nation that is unable to respond to the changes that are taking place. In fact, we have a Congress that struggles to even come up with a budget. So this notion of paradox has the capacity to really change the world. For us as individuals, it opens up the possibility of a much more interesting, full, and enriching life. For organizations, it offers them an opportunity for greater agility and higher levels of employee engagement. And for society, it offers an opportunity to really get the issues right that keep us from having a whole different way of living. And all it takes is a change in mindset, an opportunity to think of both and rather than or. Thank you so much.